do a podcast. We make a darn good team. It always goes without a hitch. Let's head to Twitch and go start up the stream. Do you want to do a podcast? It's the Nerd Glasses Podcast. Let's start now. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Nerd Glasses Podcast. Come?
All right, I'll do my own bit for myself.
Oh wait, no silence.
We're doing it. Get off the road.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Nerd Glasses Podcast. I'm Boater, and Dave is taking a break tonight, so unfortunately, I do not get to disappoint him with a joke. If I did, it would probably go something like this. Hey Dave, what did the procrastinator say when I didn't even bother to put together the joke? That's how bad the procrastinator is. Boater alone. Balloner. More like baloney, because I'm gonna try to, bluff my way through this with a whole bunch of baloney. Dave is usually the one that puts together the topics. I bring one or two topics so that I don't seem like I'm just along for the ride. Come on, Dave, tell me what we're talking about. And I have a couple topics, but this is probably going to be a short edition of the Nerd Glasses Podcast. Maybe by the end of this edition of the Nerd Glasses Podcast, I will at least be able to have the setup for a joke. The joke would go like this. Hey, Dave. This for an additional hour. What did the procrastinator say when asked when we were going to get out of quarantine? I don't know. I'll tell you next week. Anyway, guys, hello. Welcome to the Nerd Glasses Podcast right here on Insane Games TV. If you tuned in a bit early for the awesome music, you probably noticed Dan on Danny NASCAR, which is every Tuesday immediately preceding this show. And I'm like, all right, cool. I'm ready to start the pre-roll. Why is it not working? Because Dan's still streaming. He had a vendetta against someone and then got slammed into the wall during a race. So Dan, I saw that. Good job. I'll watch early next time, and maybe you'll redeem yourself. We want to see that do well. So. Yeah, so I don't have a ton of topics tonight. By all means, please feel free to comment and we'll converse via chat. If you are someone who has an idea of a few things to talk about and you want to hop into Skype or Discord or something like that, I am totally down for a post last second co-host going on here. In the meantime, guys, let's start off. Before we get into gaming news, we'll say tech stuff in general, and that is that Hamilton dropped this past week. That's not a tech thing, but it's on Disney Plus, so screw it. I'm counting it. It was my big thing this weekend. For American viewers out there, how did you spend your 4th of July, your weekend? I hope it was enjoyable. If you are a person that is home eternally, I hope that your 2 random days of the week went well. And if you're working, hopefully it was fine for you. But yeah, OMG, we never got to talk about Hamilton. Well, we're going to talk about it now, and more like Rick and Mortis, if you want to talk more in depth at some point, we can do so. But yeah, so Boater, we're making a musical theater podcast. I mean, do you want to jump on? No, so I'm not a musical theater person. If someone said, what is your favorite work of musical theater? Give me your top 3. I would say, do movie adaptations count? And you'd say, oh, okay, yeah, sure, fine. Give me your top 3. And I'd say Rent in 1776. Not necessarily in that order. No entry number 3. So, Moulin Rouge isn't an adaptation. So, yeah, so 1776, Revolutionary era. Originally, the stage production was 1972, I want to say. And something that favorite work, I was saying. I will call you, put me on speakerphone. I mean, I can we can do Skype here. Moulin Rouge is a movie Sorry, I'm talking with one person one-on-one here in chat. Please join the conversation. Sign up for a free Twitch account today. This is gonna be a very odd episode. I kind of knew that going in. Um, yes, by all means, allow me to call you on Skype. And at least we'll talk about Hamilton, we'll talk about musical theater, because why not? The last time that there was a guest host, we talked about a single game, and it completely broke Dave. So it's totally okay if we just kind of send things off the rails a little bit. Excuse me as I bring up a white screen and get totally screen lit right here, and we'll see how this goes. As I'm ringing more like rigor mortis, then... Oh. No, you could be fine on Twitch. Just connect on Skype and I'll give you a ring. Yeah, because that'll be fun. Okay, so while more like rigor mortis is getting set up with that, I had two other things to talk about really quick. So I guess I'll get the gaming news out of the way, and then we'll talk musical theater, musical movies, whatever. So the first one that I had was that Animal Crossing New Horizons, also dropping on July 3rd, dropped a new gameplay loop, and that is being able to swim in your ocean and go diving. And this is something like, oh hey, that's gonna be really cool. I'll be able to doggy paddle around my island. It'll take 5 times as long to travel as it does running, and then it. So I like the idea of swimming in Animal Crossing, but it's really you just kind of doggy paddle around. When you see a shadow, you dive for it. There's bubbles, and then you come up and you have a sea anemone. The anemone of my anemone is my anena friend or whatever. Because puns. I would have liked it to add a little more. The stuff that you pick up in that mode can be donated to the museum. Boom! Hooray!
Hello! Oh my gosh. I can't see you. Is that part of this? I don't get to see your face.
Yeah, that's part of it because my face can only be seen on the streaming software, and now I have to adjust a thing. But hello, everybody. That is not Dave. That is more like rigor mortis. I will.
Yes, I know I'm not as pretty as Dave, but I'll do a good secondary. Yes.
Yeah. Let me. Now that it's doing the split thing, I need to do an adjustment to my webcam. And
sure. Turn the light on so you can see me a bit better.
That would be fantastic.
It would be nice. I wasn't expecting to be in a podcast tonight, so I didn't set up my lighting or anything.
I mean, my lighting is kind of permanently set up, though I did put my backdrop back up tonight, so...
Or not all you, Boater, okay?
Not everybody is as big a nerd as to have a semi-permanent streaming setup.
Yeah, no.
So...
Definitely not me. I'm a smaller nerd. A couple of inches smaller. How tall are you, Boater?
6'2".
So 8. Oh crap! I have to math. 8, 9,
Math.
10,
Math time.
10 inches shorter. 10 inches smaller of a nerd.
Oh well, you know what? It's fine. Hey, as long as we're talking math, before we get to the musical theater thing, my first topic was Animal Crossing has swimming now. It's fine. I wish that there was a little more that could be done with it, but again, I only took 1 day to play around with it. I know that there's like an NPC that comes up sometimes when you're swimming, so I'll just kind of have to look into that.
Is it like a mermaid NPC?
No, it's an otter, I think. It's an otter.
Even better. Yeah, like otter. So can you swim in the ocean, or can you swim in like water masses that are contained within your island?
You can swim in the ocean. You not go swimming in the river. I decided to try to swim upstream, and that did not work. Whoop, that was funky. I tried to swim upstream, and it didn't work. So it's just ocean based. Okay, so Pascal the otter, Demon Dragon chiming in, and Demon Dragon also says itty bitty nerd.
Yeah, she knows. She's seen me.
So yeah, like I like the idea, and I kind of I want to run into that otter character, but then it's like, oh well, that was neat for once, and maybe I'll try to like round out the Critterpedia, but otherwise it's not something that you're gonna do as like a normal gameplay loop. It's just it's too annoyingly slow to swim around, unfortunately.
Can you do anything else while you're swimming? Can you like catch fish, or is it just
Yeah, so
leisure?
like you swim around and then there's a shadow under the water with bubbles coming up. You then dive under the water, you go over the shadow, and then you come up and it's like, I have a sea anemone, I have oysters, I
Ooh.
have an eel.
Ooh,
I don't know that you should
interesting.
just go plucking a sea anemone by hand.
Any one of those things, really, you probably shouldn't grab.
Yeah, I
Maybe
mean,
oysters.
it's also like it's a new month, there's new fish and such, so like the sunfish, I managed to catch one of those and it's, as big as your character. And it's like you can't see it, but basically if I was holding this entire 7 by 5 foot backdrop that I have back here for some of the fish that you catch. So that was fun.
Mm.
You mentioned math.
Speaking of catfish,
Sorry? Segways.
catfish. Where do we want to go?
Um,
Oh, I was gonna bring up the latest Nessie sighting. Did you hear about that?
I did not.
When you get a chance, Google it. There's a very clear picture that somebody took in the loch. That the guy who took it is pretty sure it's a catfish, or not a catfish, actually a sturgeon. I don't know why I'm just thinking of big fish. So he's pretty sure it's a sturgeon that was just kind of near the top of the lake. But he took a picture of it and blew it up, and it's just kind of this like large creepy thing. And
That's
probably is a
interesting.
sturgeon.
Yeah,
It's
open. Let me
cool. And
see.
it's-
I'm gonna. I have the power to show the image on screen. So, it's big.
Yeah, and it's like a clear photo too, because we're so used to the fuzzy old famous one. So this
Oh,
one's
yeah.
kind of
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, it's good. Yeah, that's a big fish, and I like that. Not only can you see like the zoomed in one, the one that I'm showing on screen right now, you see not just the zoomed in, but you see it zoomed out for scale, and yeah, that's a big fish. But yeah, there are big fish that exist. I like that the photographer didn't immediately go like it's. I'm not gonna Scottish accent, but it's Nessie. Yeah, but was like, hey, that's neat. But this is probably what it actually was. I was there. I have a pretty good idea.
Everyone else is like, it's probably Nessie. I'm like, well, I don't know, probably not, but
Jet, it'd be fun. It'd be nice.
it'd be fun.
It's like I don't believe in any of those. What's it called? The crypto
Cosmology.
cryptids.
That's cryptids, yes.
I don't believe in any of those cryptids, but gosh darn it, sure would be nice if they existed.
Yeah, we'd all be smacking our heads like, how have we not surveyed the whole lake enough to find a giant prehistoric creature? How have we not done?
Especially like
Somebody hasn't done
the
their job.
loch at this point has been pretty well surveyed. So I'm gonna say, like the oceans, yeah, there's new and scary stuff turning up there all the time. Because the oceans cover 70% of the planet, and the oceans are deep and dark and full of terrors.
Yes. Yes.
The oceans are dark and full of terrors.
Yes.
So we're gonna continually be finding things.
Mm.
Speaking of dark and full of terrors, I'm trying again to segue to this topic. It has been announced that NBA 2K21 on the next generation of consoles, the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5, will retail for $69.99. $70, where the base price for console games has been $60 for at least 15 years. I think the transition from like Xbox and PS2 up to Xbox 360 and PS3 is where they were like, hey guys, development's getting more expensive. It's been 50 games for a while, so we're putting another $10 on the price tag.
Do you think development is what's pushing it up?
What was that?
Do you think it's development costs that are pushing up the prices?
It should be $69.69. Thank you, Demon Dragon.
Yeah.
They're blaming it on development costs. And I think that partially it's that, like it costs more man hours to make a game than it did 15 years ago. And it's also something where the buying price of the dollar isn't what it was 15 years ago. So this is something where in one sense could be really like overdue for like, yeah, they need to be able to stay ahead and making profits on their games and not just rely on something that's going to get that 98 on Metacritic and sell millions and millions of copies. You know, they need to sell a, you know, if they can sell a comparatively medium level of copies, and I don't know what that is. I'm sure the target changes game to game. But you know, it'd still be nice to do something and not, you know, shut down uh, studios that make good games that get cult followings, but that aren't those major releases year to year. On the flip side of that, one thing that's come in the past 15 years has been that almost everybody's online. People can pay for DLCs a lot more easily, and microtransactions are huge. And that's why it's something with. Go ahead.
But it's a DLC.
A DLC is downloadable content. Downloadable content. So, like, 15 years ago, you would get a game and pay, say, $60 for it, and then maybe $10 for DLC for it, which would add some more missions, could add some more content to it. These would be a pack that would be sizable that you would pay $5, $10 for, whatever. And there would be some additional development that goes into that, but it's a way for them to get more costs out of the game over time. DLCs are kind of like a pack of like, hey, here's 5 things, whatever. And what's happened in the last 5 years instead is that there's been microtransactions, which is basically, hey, those 5 things that would be in DLCs, we're going to make each of them available for $1. And there's going to be 20 different things that you can just buy, you know, for $1. Or more insidiously, you could buy a chance to get one of these things for $1.
Ooh, yeah.
And that's, you know, that's what Star Wars Battlefront 2 got in trouble with, was the pay real money for the randomized loot crates. And it's something that Daddy Disney came down on them hard enough, and I said this like a week or two ago when I was talking Squadrons, that I don't think they're going to do it that much because of the fallout from Battlefront 2. Like, it had been something that was growing in the industry, that real money could be used for a chance to get things rather than to just get a thing that you want. Gamble mechanics, as Demon Dragon says, but Battlefront 2 was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back in that it was done really anti-consumer. And European countries, at least, got in and said, okay, mechanics like that, we need to regulate that. That needs, you know, it's one thing that the ESRB now puts it on their sticker or whatever. But if you can pay real money for a chance to get something, gambling commissions are getting involved. And they're saying, hey, this needs to be regulated. And I'm pretty sure that developers, if they really want the money from it, they'll go through the effort to do that. But otherwise, we've seen some backing off of that. So all that said, the NBA 2K franchise, again, this is going to be NBA 2K21 that is first announced this $70 price point. The NBA 2K franchise is pretty bad with microtransactions. So it's one thing that, like, hey, as I keep on saying 15 years, and that's roughly what it's been. As these 15 years have gone on, they've found more ways to get additional money so that they haven't had to raise the price. They can keep it at 60 but still get a longer tail on money coming in. DLCs to get a little bit of, you know, a few extra bucks. They'll come out with collector's editions that only cost them maybe $5 to make but sell for an extra $30. Like, cool, I'll get this little cheap statue and some digital items at launch, and it costs $100. Certainly we have a few of those in this house, although most of the time we get them when they go on clearance at GameStop for the statue only for like $5. Because that happens. Anyway, 2K21 is going to be $70, but I guarantee that they're not going to back off from that microtransaction stuff at all. They're like, hey, we've been doing this side stuff because we don't want to raise this. Oh, so now that you've raised this, you're not going to do that anymore? That's cute. No, we're doing it. Give us your money.
Is that the kind of stuff that they announce in advance, DLC stuff, or does that show up after the game's already been released?
So a DLC might be announced in advance as like an expansion to the game. Let's say I'm trying to look at my library to see if anything's over there that had one. I can't think off the top of my head. Let's say Jurassic Park Evolution, or Jurassic World Evolution, which is making a dino park, and a few different ways of doing that. They would announce a major DLC. For instance, the one that has a whole bunch of textures and missions based on the original Jurassic Park movie, as opposed to the newer Jurassic World movies. That's something that they would announce ahead of time and say, hey, this is a $20 expansion to our game. We've got the voice actors from the first movie. You know, we got the guy who played Alan Grant. You know, we got, you know, I think that Life Finds a Way, actor's name. Jeff Goldblum. I think
yeah.
Jeff Goldblum was
You know?
already in Jurassic World Evolution, but like we got him back for more lines. Like that's you didn't go to Mass Effect to explain DLC. I was first thinking Mass Effect Andromeda. And I'll talk about that in a sec, I guess, but so like these big DLC packs, hey, it's going to be $20. They're going to announce it ahead of time so that people know it's coming. They'll pre-order it on Steam and they get it day one, and that day one the developer gets a ton of money from that. The other way with microtransactions is just like with Fortnite, you have the battle pass and season 14 comes out and you look at your battle pass and say, hey, these are a lot of cool things that I can get with that. I'm going to put $5 into this season's battle pass so that I could get those as I play through the game. And oh, hey, that's a really cool costume that's up here today. I'm going to throw $2 of whatever Fortnite's digital currency is so that I can buy that costume. Like, oh, that just showed up in the shop today. I'm going to buy that. Like impulse buying more than what DLCs do. They're a lot cheaper overall, but that kind of thing means that like, Steph, Demon Dragon, how much money have you dropped into League of Legends if you don't mind sharing with us? This free game, where there's a lot of like skins and such and so forth. If you don't want to share, that's fine. In the meantime, she mentioned Mass Effect, and I said Mass Effect Andromeda. Mass Effect Andromeda is one where all of the Mass Effect games, until it came out, had major expansions that came out. Citadel is one that was a really touching way to end up your trilogy with all of your friends that you've made through the entire time. Mass Effect Andromeda came out. Everyone expected, well, it's going to get DLC, but it did so poorly on release that they straight up said, we're not going to make the DLC for it. We had planned on it, but it got really poor reception, so we're scrapping it. Which I will always be salty about because that game got a lot more shit than it deserved.
Show me your salt.
Yeah. Instead, they took the story of the DLC and published it as a novel, which is fine, but not the same as playing it in a DLC.
Yeah.
Not the same as like playing it in game and experiencing it. Like the story still got told, which is nice, but Demon Dragon says, I think I've spent around $500 on League of Legends, and I've been playing for over 7 years. So yes, microtransactions that add up. And again, that's not exactly like NBA 2K21, which is year after year they're going to keep releasing a full price thing and then hope that you buy a few things after that. But yeah, microtransactions can add up after time, and that's kind of what the developers are counting on.
I'm sure you're going to get to it, but I'm going to point out that I popped on here to talk about Hamilton. And
I was just about to. I was
going
to say thank you for hanging out for the first half hour, as I had a couple other things to get to. But yes, musical theater. This is probably where you're going to now take the reins of the conversation, which is totally fine. You've done a great job of smiling and nodding as I've talked. But yes, Hamilton dropped on Disney Plus on Friday, July 3rd. I watched it on the 4th with Steph and really enjoyed it. More like Rigor Mortis, I believe that you were the one that recommended to me that I watch it with subtitles.
Yeah, how'd that work out for you?
Yeah, that worked well. So like I hadn't listened to the cast recording at all. For me, it'd be like, oh well, you know, if I see the show, then I'll do that. Like I wouldn't want to listen to the cast recording ahead of time, which is just
I mean,
odd
it's
hang up
history.
of mine.
There's no spoilers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's basically the entire story except for a couple of spoken word bits, which apparently also changed the. Like I saw a few articles talking about like the very end of the play, where like something that doesn't read in the cast recording and the singing, there's like a little bit of vocal and what's going on stage, might be different than how people might have determined. No, I don't know, figured out. Uh, I read
Words?
a few. I read a yes, words. I read in a few places where people were like, "Oh, I was really surprised at exactly how the musical concluded." Because I felt that the cast recording left things a little open to interpretation as to what exactly was going on in the stage at the end there.
Okay. So I have seen the show in Chicago, which was a slightly different staging, and they didn't end it in exactly the same way. So in the show, you kind of have Eliza ending up front.
Spoilers.
And
Go watch it on Disney Plus.
I don't. I guess spoilers.
It's been public for people to witness for like 4 years, so
I guess.
and
I'll
like
take
4 or
listen
5
to.
days. But yes,
Your witness.
Hamilton
Yeah.
spoilers from here on out. Please continue.
This also happened like 200 years ago, more or less.
I mean, yes, obviously.
By now, you should know. Anyway, so yeah, Eliza ending up front with that like reaction was not something that happened in the show that I saw.
Okay.
She walked off stage with like Hamilton comes up and like takes her hand
Okay,
pretty soon after I can't wait to see you again, and then they walk off stage.
gotcha.
And yeah, so I'm not sure what people are. That's the only thing I can think
Yeah,
of.
that's pretty much that, because like that shout, gasp, whatever. Spoiler alert: Hamilton dies.
Yeah, which is mentioned in the first song, so
Yeah. Oh yeah.
basically like in the first page.
The first song is a TLDR for the next 3 hours.
Almost. It's the first song is like the first 100 pages of the like 500-page biography that Chernow wrote.
Oh, I didn't read
Yeah.
it.
Neither did I.
Apologies to you and to Mike, but I didn't read it.
I know. We should get Mike on the show
Oh
as
my
well.
gosh.
Just have a Hamilton nerd glasses. These are the nerd glasses that I wear, by the way.
That's fine. You know what? The title doesn't necessarily say it has to be about gaming, just because we're on Insane Games TV, which y'all should
Mhm.
definitely follow. Sorry, the button's down here now. Anyway,
But, yes, if
yeah.
Hamilton
So,
was-
backtrack, breadcrumb.
yeah,
Since
tell me more about what you thought about it.
Yeah, so like since I watched it with subtitles, which definitely helped, especially at the start, because any movie or anything that you're unfamiliar with, sometimes it takes a little bit for me to like train my ear to what's going on. Demon Dragon mentioned 1776, which we were kind of planning on just having on in the background afterward. It's an old enough movie with a different kind of sound production, and they're all speaking in very different, accents, colonial accents, that it takes a little bit in 1776 to train your ear and follow along. So, to do that in Hamilton while they're singing and rapping so fast, I wouldn't have been able to keep up. So, definitely worth subtitles on, at least the first time through.
Yeah, if you haven't listened to it before and you don't already know, if you're not already anticipating a lot of the words, I highly recommend subtitles. And it's the thing is entirely sung. There is almost no speaking lines.
Yeah, there's very few speaking lines, to the point where like there was, I think like maybe midway through I was like, oh, well, like I wonder if I can spot any speaking lines, and then they were still done so naturally that it was never like a break. It wasn't, oh, they're finally not singing. It was excuse me. It was very it was smooth. The transitions were very smooth from song to song for the most part, but also anytime where there was anything spoken in between, it was connective tissue that worked really well. Again, I think I said that my two previous experiences with like musical stuff that I have like watched a lot have been Rent in 1776. And Rent, I think on stage is sung through a bit more. Not to the same extent as Hamilton, but it is more sung through. In the movie, because it wasn't just filming the stage production like this was with Hamilton,
Mhm.
In the movie, they took some of the songs and just turned them into spoken bits, just kind of for the sake of flow of a movie, which worked well.
And
Um,
add some dialogue that wasn't in the show at all.
yeah,
Yeah.
um, cut a couple of pieces for the odd. Yeah, but and then 1776, I think, is also it isn't on stage mostly sung through. I think that they actually pretty faithfully adapted that for screen, aside from having the freedom to move to different locations for filming.
Yeah, I've never
Um,
seen 76. So was it done more like Rent, like a full film that is
yeah,
a
it was
music?
done. It was done as a full film. So like there are sets that you're at a lot. Like you're in the Continental Congress a lot for scenes that are happening there. But for sometimes you're in the courtyard by a fountain outside of Jefferson's house, apartment, whatever, where he's trying to write the Declaration, or uh, you know, the bits where John Adams is singing to Abigail. They'll actually like flash to Abigail on the farm and singing in response. So it never at any point did I feel like, wow, they're getting a lot of use out of this set. They did it pretty well as far as the movie goes for like, hey, this is something that could naturally be somewhere else. This song taking place on the steps outside of the main room in Congress for the egg, while the rest of Congress is debating the Declaration inside.
Mhm.
It works well.
Yeah, those are
Um,
interesting to watch back to back because Thomas Jefferson and John Adams are antagonists in Hamilton.
yes. Well, John Adams isn't in Hamilton. He's
Yeah, it's
mentioned.
like a voiceover.
Yeah. He's like mentioned
Mm.
once or twice. And actually, there was an interview with Lin-Manuel Miranda and the gentleman who played John Adams. I could look it up. I'll check really right now. But how fast can I type? Um,
So like the actor in the film or the
William
original story?
Daniels. William Daniels. Well,
Okay.
one in the same. For the film, they got the entire original Broadway cast.
Noise. That is very rare in
Yes.
film. Usually you have to put a star in there to get everyone else on board, which is why Les Mis was made the way that it was, which is why Moulin Rouge is a thing.
Hmm.
Actually, even in Streetcar Named Desire, they like the main woman. They got everybody else in the play was in the film except for the main woman. They had to get a movie star, or they didn't think anyone would see it,
Okay.
and so one person from the original show didn't get to be in it.
Of the 8 primary cast in Rent, 6 out of 8 came back for the movie.
Yeah.
And that's because like the last 2 were like, I'm not young enough to play Mimi anymore. Let's get Rosario Dawson.
Yeah,
And
did a
then I
fantastic
think
job.
Joanne was also recast.
Yes.
Um, and for 1776, it's the entire original cast. And the only thing that threatened that was that Howard Da Silva, who played Ben Franklin, was an absolute menace during the production. He was the worst to work with. So they were like, maybe not him, and he like pledged to be an angel to be in the movie.
Huh. I could see that.
And yeah, just iconic. But yes, William Daniels, who played John Adams, Lin-Manuel Miranda told him during this interview for Playbill, I think,
Hmm.
that was like, yeah, we mentioned John Adams in Hamilton, and all of us picture you when we mention him. Um, Jefferson, I think, is the only one that appears in both, and that's a bit of a adjustment to go from quiet, staid Jefferson to someone that Steph said
Like,
at one point, yeah, I could see Thomas Jefferson being that extra.
yeah. Yeah, the purple of that coat is
Oh
not
my.
an accident.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah, Prince vibes, Prince vibes.
yeah.
Absolutely. Did you catch the direct reference to 1776 that's in Hamilton?
I probably did, but I don't remember it.
No, he literally says "sit down, John." at
Oh,
some
yes, yeah.
things that, yeah, yeah. There's a bunch of great like little musical theater Easter eggs and rap Easter eggs.
Hmm.
I don't know as many of the latter, but one of the relics from our former job together I took home the Hamiltome, as it's called, like the really thick book that they wrote about the musical.
Oh, yep.
And I think I like got blood on it or something, so I had to keep it. So.
Oh no! Gee, I really can't afford this. I shouldn't buy this. It would be a shame if something happened to it where I would be forced to keep it.
Mm-hmm. Hey for that discount. Yeah, so I caught a couple of these things through that book, but there's that Sit Down, John piece, the fact that the king remembers seeing John Adams is a reference to the TV show, I think, John Adams. There's at the end of the affair, he sings "Nobody Needs to Know," which is a line from The Last 5 Years, which is a different musical that includes an affair.
I know I definitely caught a couple. I just don't remember them at this point because there was a lot to take in. A lot happened in the 3 hours of Hamilton, and like it was great that there were points where I was like, I got that one. I caught that reference. But for the most part, yeah, it was enjoyable to watch through. And I was
Fun fact.
Go ahead.
I'm going to throw this in because this is just a piece of absolute nerdery. So when they're talking about Hamilton and I think John Jay and James Madison writing the Federalist Papers, they talk about like John Jay wrote like 9, Madison wrote like 22, and then Hamilton wrote 51. I'm like, that's actually not true, because there's a book that I got out of the bookstore we used to work in that did a statistical data analysis of different works of literature. So it looks at how many times words tend to pop up in books and what authors favor which words, and do books with shorter first sentences do better than books with longer first sentences.
Literary forensics.
For real, but with like the absolute pinnacle of nerdery. So like books and data science. Yeah. And one of the things it looked at was the Federalist Papers, because Hamilton claims he wrote 51 of them, and Madison claims that he wrote, like his 22, and also a bunch that Hamilton claimed that he wrote. And like historians had been looking at it for years, and they were doing all these arguments based on the way that the papers were written and the ideas they espouse. And then 2 statisticians went, okay, let's look at the words that are used and let's look at the punctuation. So they took everything Hamilton wrote and everything Madison wrote that was attested to them. And then they looked at these papers and realized that Madison wrote all of the papers that Hamilton claimed to have also written.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And they figured it out based on like word usage. There was like one word that Hamilton almost never used and would instead use like a different synonym, and Madison used it way more, and a piece of punctuation that Madison used a lot more.
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, so that's fun, like listening to that moment in the musical, which is supposed to be like, oh my God, he does so much. He just writes like a crazy person. That's actually not true.
But one of those where your outside knowledge goes, actually.
Exactly. Also, the line about Martha Washington named his feral tomcat after him, and Hamilton jumps up and says that's true. In the book, Lin-Manuel's like, it's actually probably not true, but I feel like this is something that Hamilton
would say.
Would perpetuate. So
unreliable narrators, you say?
Just
especially because so much of it is narrated by Burr, and then the implication that Eliza did a lot of narrating and filling in gaps and probably mythologizing along the way. It's not really told from Hamilton's point of view. Like, he's in a lot of the scenes, but all the connective tissue in between, whether it's spoken or like the sung stuff, is most of it is Burr. How did this, and unfortunately I don't remember the sequence of the words right now, but some of the opening lines, and then
do them, but they're not super proper for a podcast, a family podcast. We're not past the watershed yet.
But this isn't a family podcast, and we've said worse.
What does it go? How does a bastard, orphan, son of a whore and a Scotsman dropped in the something middle of the Caribbean?
Yeah.
So that's, that's why you need
Yeah,
subtitles.
and that's repeated a few times too. So again, like that's Burr trying to be like, okay, so here's the story that we're telling. That is our protagonist, but he's kind of doing that. Same with The Room Where It Happened. That like that's you know we get Hamilton's side, but it's prefaced with nobody was there. We only have their words on what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I think even when they're talking about what's happening, it's all preceded by like Thomas claims, and it's the word
Yep.
claims that
Yeah.
kind of makes you question it. And Burr's asking like, was there presidential pressure to deliver? Like, what made you sell New York City down the river? 'Cause I remember
Yeah,
those-
yeah.
yeah, it's good stuff.
And similar sort of thing for for the piece where Hamilton is introduced to Eliza, and it kind of goes through this whirlwind of their courtship and getting married and everything, and then rewind and getting Angelica's view of it.
Yeah, no, that is
That was so well
genius
done.
staging. That was
I-
extraordinarily well done.
Like,
When I saw it in
I would
Chicago,
not have thought that
it-
that's something that you could do on stage.
Yeah, like you can. It's such intense choreography, and when you watch it, you realize that you were set up in all these different beats
Mhm.
to recognize something that was physically happening and be able to look at it again. That it wasn't just like we need to move people around the stage so that they can be out of the way and so that things can happen.
Yeah.
It was so exquisitely choreographed. When I saw it in Chicago, it wasn't as well done, and it was kind of frustrating. But
It's one of those things where it's number one, I'm sure that it was choreographed really well, but number two, by virtue of this being a filmed version that we watched, what the cameras show us, even though it is on stage and able to be, theoretically able to be seen, like when you're there live, you can see everything, you can choose where you're looking. The cameras had pointed us in a very specific direction. So,
Yeah.
like, you can be aware of, oh, yes, the staging allowed for that, but it's also what are the cameras showing? This was filmed over the course of, I think, 3 different nights.
I think it was 5.
5? Okay.
I think they actually did one without an audience as well.
Yeah, I definitely could tell, as a camera nerd, I could tell when the camera was on stage with them.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
like one or two shots from the back, 1 or 2 close-ups that were not done with a 500 mil lens from halfway back in the stands, but were done from 3 feet away, or as we say, within spitting distance of King George.
Yeah, oh God, I know that actor's name too, and it's slipping my mind, but that poor guy, it's just now immortalized. And like, this is why you don't get that close in musical theater. And
No,
he
but it
can't
worked
react
so
to it.
well for King George. It wasn't embarrassing. It was like, King is a fool because he's that worked up or whatever. Yeah.
Yes, this is a great tiny part.
I don't know if you saw my status on this, I think yesterday, but it's something where I had a bit of trouble following along because the genres of music used throughout most of the production aren't what I normally listen to. Meanwhile, the bit for King George comes on and he starts talking. He starts singing his bit, and I'm like, oh, I like this. Wait,
Yeah,
is it because
pop.
this is, the most traditionally read white musically done piece? And it's like, I'm not necessarily second guessing, but it's like hyper aware in that moment.
No, there's different styles of music that is done throughout Hamilton. Like it's very well known for the rap part.
Yep.
Eliza does like an R&B kind of like traditional early R&B ballad. The King is singing like a Brit pop song.
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson's doing like a slightly out of date, like kind of early funk song.
Yep.
Funk might not be the right term.
Yeah.
And originally Benjamin Franklin was also going to be in this show, and Lin-Manuel was writing like an old rock song for him because he would be so much older than
Yeah.
a lot of the people there. The idea was that he would also be from an older form of music.
Nice.
And so, Yeah, there's a lot in there that it also took me reading the tome to recognize what was going on, because a lot of it is not a genre of music I listen to, and B, not a genre of music that gets featured in musical theater. I mean,
Yeah, like most of it isn't. Yeah.
the most famous
Um,
rap before this was in like Into the Woods,
mhm.
that kind of like musical theater, and it was kind of just like a very fast pitter patter. Um, and yeah, that was at the time very racy to have like a rap song in a musical. And here
Yeah,
we are.
and then here we are that um that it's in a full production of not something contemporary even, but something historical. That
Mm,
is something that's like, especially because like it's fun to compare this with 1776.
yeah.
But especially coming off of 1776, which tries very much to be historically accurate in pronunciation, Maryland, for the name of the colony, and so forth. And musical styles that maybe, if not from the time, would at least sound like that to an audience listening in the 70s, not to mention later.
1776 is very like traditional
Very
traditional
traditional, yeah.
musical theater.
And so to come to Hamilton off of that is a shock to the system.
It
But
is.
once you get over that shock, very enjoyable.
It's a cool shock. I
Yeah.
like that shock.
No, it is,
It's
yeah.
supposed to be.
It's
Yeah.
it's that kind of like wonderful musical whiplash you get sometimes. Like, ow, my neck, but I don't mind. I'm
Of
okay with
course,
this.
of course. That musical whiplash we all know about.
Oh yes, yes.
I do wonder. So I assume in the film 1776 they have accents that we would in modern day recognize as British.
Yeah,
Correct.
so it's yes, but also it's not just straight up received pronunciation.
Hmm.
They to some extent did look up period accurate pronunciation. Again, I'm gonna say that Maryland was pronounced Maryland.
Mm,
Virginia.
mm.
Um, and there plenty of others, but again, like I said, I didn't get the chance to rewatch it this year yet. I might do so maybe like this weekend. But yeah, it is an enjoyable watch, and I do recommend that as well. But I'm not sure where that is streaming. Whereas again, Hamilton is streaming on Disney Plus,
Yeah.
and highly recommended.
No, just coming at it from a linguist perspective, as you know that I will,
Yeah.
because the American accent is probably still fairly close to what the accent was when it was a colony, because fossilization of accents happens.
Mhm.
Actually, I think like the stereotypical Boston accent, especially the Brahmin accent, so the higher class Boston accent, so like a Harvard accent, is probably one of the closest to what the accent would have been in early colonial times. So I was
Gotcha.
wondering if it was like if we would pinpoint it watching as like that is a British accent, when a British accent now is notably different from what it was back then. But I would have to watch it and then read all the linguist notes on it, which is a
um,
different pair of nerd glasses that I would have to put on.
if you want to watch it, it looks like it's available to stream on something called Pluto TV. Pluto TV to be ad supported. I don't know what that is. It is also available to rent on Amazon, Google Play, YouTube for Apple TV for like $2.99, $3.99, depending on where you get it from. So
Okay.
you can rent it to stream. Um, Rather than being included in like Netflix or Hulu or something like that. I do recommend it, but again, I can't exactly give you my DVD of it right now.
Bummer.
Yeah, so I don't know if you had anything else to add about Hamilton. We are getting close to that 8:30 mark. I don't mind ending about 5 minutes early, which is a lot better than if I had to fly this solo. We would have been like half an hour into the Citadel by now.
Happy to just jump in with something non-related to your
No,
usual
that's
topic.
perfect.
I
That's
want to talk
perfect.
about.
Because again, like the last time that Dave had a guest host, he brought
Mhm.
up one single game and just proceeded to break Dave for the next 45 minutes. So it is wonderful to do something different with Nerd Glasses. Thank you very much for hopping in and joining with when you said I can talk about that topic.
I can all day and all night, and I didn't even have to break you to do it. So let
Yay!
us
I
guess.
appreciate not being broken. I still have the Citadel to do after this. And if anyone
Yeah.
is interested in sticking around for that, I will be playing the Bard's Tale on the Citadel tonight. So when we go offline here, just keep your browser or smart TV or whatever you're watching this on pointed right here, twitch.tv/insanegamestv_. And somewhere between 60 and 90 seconds later, the pre-roll will come up for the Citadel. But
Before we do that, can you sing the announcement that you had for the Citadel, please?
yeah, at points in the Bard's Tale, like the little goblins will come up and just sing, "Oh, it's bad luck to be you. A chosen one of many isn't new," and it's like a sing along. So there's like a little bouncing ball along the lyrics at the bottom. So my
Just-
announcement this morning was, let me see if I can remember those lyrics for it. Oh, it's bad luck to be you. We're playing the Bard's Tale tonight, it's true. 9 at Insane Games TV. We'll find more pants for the pantry. Oh, it's bad luck to be you. Of course, going with the one meme that I've gotten through streaming, and that's regarding pants.
Pantry.
Because
surprised?
you randomly find pants on the ground in that game, and they're worth money. So, okay.
Yeah, why
And
not?
then we found it in other games. So, it's games that have pants as loot. A
Mhm.
list.
It's what the Citadel subtitle is. Games that has pants as loot. Well, that ties in singing and video games, so I feel like this is a good place to
Yeah, I
end.
think so. So, more like Rigor Mortis, thank you so much for joining me tonight. This has been really enjoyable to talk a couple gaming topics at you while you smile and nodded, and then to have the Hamilton discussion that you were able to lead. So, thank you again for that. Thank you
You're
for
welcome.
stepping
It's my first ever podcast. Thanks for having me on here at literally
Yay!
notice.
Like all episodes of the Nerd Glasses podcast, this will be live on YouTube within about a week. So then you can share it and be like, "Look, we talked stuff." In the meantime, folks, the Citadel is coming up shortly. So thank you all so much for watching. If you're sticking around for the Citadel, I'll see you in just a few minutes. Otherwise, be sure to follow right here at Insane Games TV. We have a ton of really cool programming week long. And at the very least, I'll see you next week, 7:30 on the Nerd Glasses podcast. Bye, everybody.